Myself, Manish Kumar. My specialization is in rehabilitation, working as assistant professor in physiotherapy. I am going to discuss about current methodology of locomotor disability evaluation in this session. The objective of this session will be first we are going to see what are the basic modification has been changed in rights of person with disabilities act 2016 in comparison to the old PWD act of 1995. Secondly, we are going to focus on disability evaluation based on RPWD act 2016. Before proceeding further, we need to understand why being physiotherapist we have to acquire or to know the disability evaluation process. So the first and the foremost reason for this is physiotherapist in the medical scenario is the person who is in contact with the patient at multi-level. Physiotherapists are also involved at the multi-level of management of the patient. So by the first, that is multi-level contacts, I mean to say physiotherapists are involved in the management of the patient at the hospital level. Also they are providing the community care. They are also giving the basic training to the family and caregivers in case of patients who are required long long medical care or uh, future medical care is recommended for this in many chronic condition of the patients. So you can see the contact of the physiotherapist with the patient is at multi-level. By second point, that is physiotherapists are involved at the multi-level in the management of the patient. I mean to say the physiotherapists are not only actively involved in the rehabilitation phase, that is a tertiary level of medical care, but they are also actively and effectively involved in the primary level of medical care, that is in prevention. They are also involved in the secondary level of medical care, that is in they are actively working in the ICU setup for the betterment of the patient afflicted by different neurological, orthopedic or cardiopulmonary problems. And in the tertiary level of medical care, in rehab, that is in rehabilitation, physiotherapist plays a very crucial role. So they are not they are having multi-level contact with the patient, and they are also involved in the multi-level of medical care of the patient. So these two things, so these two factors, that is multi-level contacts and multi-level involvement in the management of the patient, leads to more time duration of the physiotherapist with patients. So if time duration is more that physiotherapist is spending with patient, then they are in better position to understand the detail of the problem the patient is going through, both socially, psychologically, and medically also, and they are in better position to guide what are his rights and abilities. So, in true sense, you can say physiotherapists are in the position to provide the holistic approach in the management of the patient. In addition to this, state government and central government run hospital refer the person with disability to the physiotherapist for physical examination. For example, range of motion, MMT, sensory assessment, uh, etc., which are being assessed by the physiotherapist and documented, and this documentation is being utilized in the process of disability evaluation. So they are not involved directly, I mean to say, as per the Act, in the process of disability evaluation, the physiotherapist has not been mentioned as a team member in the medical board which are assessing the disability evaluation and prescribing the disability certificate. But their skills are being effectively utilized in the process of disability evaluation. So these points guide us that physiotherapists ought to know disability evaluation. As per the World Bank report in the current year 2020, statistics had revealed that 15% of world population or 1 billion people experience some form of disability, and it has been also seen that the prevalence of disability is higher in the developing countries like India. Out of these 15%, 8 to 12% of PWDs are suffering from more than one type of disability. By this I mean to say, for example, cerebral palsy. In cerebral palsy, in addition to the delayed milestone and other motor impairment, there can be associated loss of vision or hearing depending on the part of the brain which has been damaged. So, no one disease leads to the disability of one type. The person can be affected by more than one type of disability. In Indian scenario, around 2 to 3% of total population are having some form of disability. Among the disabled population, it has been seen the most common disability in the Indian population is related to the locomotor, that is movement problem, followed by higher motor function problem, that is vision and hearing, and so on. Disability evaluation. Disability evaluation is an important aspect of clinical care. That is, disability evaluation can be done in the clinical setup also, and through the disability evaluation, we can see the progress of our treatment for a given condition. Accurate evaluation significantly affects the well-being of both the patient and the society. It gives the impact of disability on the financial remuneration, how the person will return to work, which type of work will be available to him according to his functional capability, personal and workplace productivity, and assess for existing and future healthcare needs. So all these aspects will depend on accurate disability evaluation, which is very important aspect in clinical setup also and in assessing the other parameters of the disabled persons. In simple terms, disability evaluation is defined as the quantification of the residual inability. So just we are giving the number, or we are calculating mathematically how much the person is unable to carry out his day-to-day activities. So basically, inability is being evaluated. Grades of disability. Many articles and books have uh, given the grades of disability, although it has not been mentioned in the Act. So, grades of disability, mild has been categorized as less than 40% of impairment or disability, moderate 40% and above, severe 75% and above, profound is 100%. So as per the Act, all the rights related to the Act or given in the Act will be available to PWDs if they have been evaluated and has been granted 40% of disability. Now, we are going to see what are the basic modification has been done in the new act in comparison to the PWD Act of 1995. So as per PWD Act 1995, disability has been categorized in 7 domains: blindness, low vision, leprosy cured, hearing impairment, locomotor disability, mental retardation, and mental illness. Now, first change has been made in the category of disability itself. From 7, it has increased up to 21. So, the number of enlisted types of disability have been increased from existing 7 to 21. In addition to this, the central government will have the power to add more types of disabilities. That means they have the power to increase the number of disabilities or categories of disabilities depending upon the current scenario of the population or the type of disability which has been find in whose prevalence will be more in the Indian population, that can be included by amendment through the central government. So these two basic differences or modification has been done from the previous PWD Act of 1995. So now that 21 categories of disabilities are blindness, low vision, leprosy cured persons, hearing impairment, locomotor disability, dwarfism, intellectual disability, mental illness. So mental retardation has been replaced by intellectual disability. So many terms have also been replaced. We will see as we will go through the slides. Then autism spectrum disorder, which were previously not very common in the Indian population, but now autistic problem has a big rise in the Indian population, so it has been included. Cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy has been kept in a separate category. Chronic neurological condition, specific learning disabilities has been included, which were not there in the 1995 Act. Multiple sclerosis has been added. Speech and language disability has been added. Then blood disorders, 3 types of blood disorders has been included. So these are thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell disease, multiple disabilities including deaf blindness has been included. Acid attack victims related disabilities have been included in this new act of 2016, and Parkinson disease. So all these category has been included on the survey or by doing the survey on the type of disability which has higher incidence in the Indian population. In addition to this, initially only a small sheet of paper providing the disability percentage called as a disability certificate were issued. Now, unique disability ID is being given to the person with disability. On that smart card, they have got UDID number. The type of disability will be mentioned, the percentage of disability will also be mentioned, and the validity of this card will be for 10 years. That will be mentioned on the card. So all the government facilities and rights will be transferred to the person with disability with the help of this card, with the use of this card. So it is very useful and effective step taken by the government for providing all the types of resources, both financial and uh, other type of resources, educational services. So all these can be directly benefited to the PWD with the help of this smart card. So in brief, we'll see what are the main disabilities which has been included for the first time. So that is speech and language disability has been included. Specific learning disabilities have been added for the first time. Acid attack victims have been included. Dwarfism, muscular dystrophy have been indicated as separate class of specified disabilities. Specified disabilities are the list of disability which has been specified in the Act. The new categories of disability also included three blood disorder, thalassemia, hemophilia, and sickle cell disease. So these basic modifications have been brought in the new act. So why it has been brought? Because India was a signatory in the United Nations Convention on the Right of Person with Disability, which has occurred in 2006. So the government has modified the previous act, and the new act will bring our law in line with the UNICRPD provisions or protocols. So that's why the modification has been done. So the key terms as per the new Act of 2016, which has been changed or modified in certain ways, we will understand in this slide. The first term which has been included in RPWD Act 2016 is person with benchmark disability. It means a person with not less than 40% of his specified disability as certified by the certifying authority. Then disability initially was defined according to the International Classification of Impairment, Disability and Handicap ICIDS model of WHO of 1980. Now it has been defined as per the ICF model, International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health. So in that, activity limitation has been given more emphasis. How the person activity level has been reduced. So initially the loss of function at the individual level were seen, which were expected to be done by the normal people of the same age and gender. So if the person is not able to do those activities which are expected to be done, then that person were put under the category of disability. Now, activity limitation here not only consider the loss of function but also consider the environment in which the activity is to be expected. Not only age and gender but also what is the environment in the person is doing that activity. At the same time, what are the personal factors of the different types of individual, they are also being included as per the ICF model. So what I mean to say, the ICF says कि there is loss of body function and structure, and activity and participation level decreases due to loss of certain function or disability. But we need to say need to see the interaction between the components of contextual factors with the loss of these functioning. The contextual factors like environmental factors, personal factor. For example, a person living in remote rural area may need to walk for longer distances. So that walking a longer distances can be normal to a person living in that remote rural area, but that cannot be normal or can be expected by a person living in urban area. So that person can be disabled in the context of environment. So all these factors have been considered in putting a person in the disability category depending on the ICEF model. Rehabilitation in the Act has been defined as it refers to a process aimed at enabling the persons with disabilities to attain and maintain optimal physical, sensory, intellectual, psychological, environment or social function levels. Now, the central government has notified the guidelines for the purpose of assessing the extent of following a specified disability in a person. So, these are the guidelines on which the disability evaluation will depend. So all the 21 categories of disabilities have been clubbed in 8 domains. Locomotor disability, which will include cerebral palsy, leprosy, dwarfism, acid attack victims, and muscular dystrophy, blindness and low vision, deaf and hard of hearing and speech and language disability, intellectual disability and specific learning disability, mental illness, chronic neurological condition, blood disorders are clubbed together, hemophilia, thalassemia, and sickle cell disease, and multiple disability. So 21 types of disabilities has been categorized or has been clubbed into these 8 groups. So we are going to discuss about the locomotor disability evaluation. So first we need to understand what is locomotor disability, how it has been defined in the Act. Locomotor disability means a person's inability to execute distinctive activities associated with movement of self and object resulting from affliction of musculoskeletal or nervous system or both. So that means we are seeing what type of locomotor execution the person is unable to do related to the movement of self and manipulating the objects from one place to another. So all these are affected, and how they are affected. Either they will be affected by the musculoskeletal problem or the nervous system, or maybe both the system have been affected, that has led to the loss of a certain movement. So we'll categorize that person in the locomotor disability. In this locomotor disability, so all the case of you can take like polio or peripheral nerve injury or lower motor neuron lesion. So all these which are leading to the loss of certain movement will be categorized as a locomotor disability. So locomotor disability will can be evaluated in 2 parts: upper extremity evaluation, lower extremity evaluation. Then the central part will be evaluated, evaluation of spine. Evaluation of spine will be categorized into 2 parts: traumatic lesion, atraumatic lesions, then amputation, club foot, lymphedema, Charcot joints, evaluation in neurological condition, stroke, ataxia, spinal cord injury, acid attack victims, cerebral palsy, leprosy cured individual, and dwarfism. So locomotor disability evaluation will be done in all these categories. So in chronic neurological conditions, uh, in case of stroke, ataxia, spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy, the locomotor part which has been affected by a neurological condition have also been included in the locomotor disability evaluation process. So before proceeding into the disability evaluation process, we have to keep a certain important notes in our mind. That is, disability is always certified as a whole number, not as a fraction. In cases with bilateral involvement, the percentage of permanent physical impairment is calculated for each side and then combining formula is used. The estimation and measurement of disability will be done only after it has been mentioned by the medical authority that the stage of maximum improvement of a given patient has been achieved. Then only we have to do disability evaluation. Total disability percentage should not exceed in any circumstances above 100%, which is practically impossible. 100% is also very rare. 100% disability is not ever occur. So upper extremity evaluation. Upper extremity evaluation. Upper extremity, you can see here, is divided into 2 parts. So we are talking about upper limb. So arm component, hand component. Okay, so arm component is being taken from shoulder, elbow, forearm, wrist and hand. Wrist, till wrist we have to take. Then hand component will take the account of hand function. So arm component and hand component together will comprise upper extremity evaluation. So we have to calculate the PPI, that is permanent physical impairment percentage. So we are calculating the inability the person is having. So what are the inability at the shoulder level, elbow level, wrist level and hand level? So in the upper extremity PPI calculation, we have to calculate the disability evaluation separately for the upper arm component and hand component. So now if you are talking about the arm component, the maximum weightage disability weightage is being given as 90%. And arm component, to assess the arm component disability, we have to assess the range of motion of shoulder, elbow, forearm, wrist, hand. Then muscle strength, again the muscles around the shoulder, elbow, wrist. Then activity coordination, in the act there are certain activities which are mentioned. Those are functional activities which will examine, and as per the inability of the person with disability to do that those functional activity, we will give the percentage which has been allotted in the chart. So joint range of motion, the total weightage of disability has been given as 90%. Now this 90% is divided into 4 parts: shoulder area, elbow area, wrist area and hand. Shoulder has been given the weightage of 20% loss, elbow has been given the weightage of to 20% loss, wrist has been given the weightage up to 10% loss, hand has been given the weightage up to 40%. Initially, again in the PWD Act of 1995, equal weightage has been given to 3 parts only: shoulder, elbow, wrist and hand. So wrist and hand were combined together and has been given 30% weightage, and shoulder, elbow has also been given 30%. Now in the new act it has been recategorized the weightage of PPI on different joints. Shoulder has been given less, elbow has been given less, wrist has given more less percentage, and hand has been given more weightage of 40%. So if more than one joint is involved, we have to calculate the loss of range of motion of each joint and they are added together. So we have to see shoulder range of motion, all the range of motion should be measured and we will see how much percentage has been lost. The same thing will be done in the elbow, in the wrist, in the hand. Then all the loss percentage of range of motion of all these joints will be added together in a simple way. So here are the range of motion of all the joints have been mentioned, and according to this we'll see how much loss is there. If the patient is able to do 90% of flexion of the shoulder joint, so the loss percentage of flexion will be 50%. So likewise we have to see all the loss of range of motion percentage and then we have to add up together. So one thing it is very important to mention, once you have find out the percentage loss of any one joint, for example you have measured all the movements of the shoulder joint, flexion, extension, abduction and lateral and medial rotation. You have seen the loss of percentage of these range of motion. So if For example, if you have found 50% loss of motion is there in flexion extension, 50% in abduction adduction, 50% in internal and external rotation. So 50 50 50 will be added, that is 150. Now this 150 will be multiplied by 0.2 because the contribution in the loss of range of motion has been given up to 20%. So we have to calculate the mean loss of range of motion by the shoulder joint. So in order to calculate that, we need to multiply that 150% into 0.2, and the value that is will come will be taken as the mean loss around the shoulder joint in the range of motion category. Likewise, we have to multiply it by 0.2 for elbow, then for wrist we have to multiply it by 0.1, for hand we have to multiply it by 0.4. Then the second domain in the arm component is muscle strength. So total weightage of disability percentage has been given as 90%. In order to assess the muscle strength, in the act it has been given, we have to use the Medical Research Council scale, MRC scale. So which is a scale we commonly use in our clinical setup also. So as per the scale, 0% 0 grade will be given the value of 100% of disability, यानी कि that is 100% of loss of strength. 1 is given as 80% loss of strength, 2 as 60% loss of strength, 3 40% loss of strength, 4 20% loss of strength, and grade 5 will be considered as normal, and 0% of loss of strength will be documented. Then the loss of power can be given percentages as follows. How we are allocating for different joints. So first we have here the value of muscle strength will be equally divided between shoulder, elbow and wrist. 30%, 30%, 30%. So for example, if we have find out around the shoulder there is 60% of loss, so that 60% should be multiplied by 0.3 because the contribution or the weightage of the shoulder muscular strength has been given the value of 30%. So whatever percentage we have found in the flexors, extensors, abductors, adductors and rotators, we need to add up them. If 200 has come, then that 200 should be multiplied by 0.3, and that value will be the mean loss of strength around the shoulder joint. Likewise, we have to multiply with 0.3 for elbow, 0.3 for the wrist, and then those will be added in a simple way to find out total loss of strength in the arm component. Then third domain is your coordinated activity. Coordinated activity again has given the value of maximum value of 90%. 10 functional activities has been enlisted in the act, and according to the inability of the person to do this functional activity, the loss of activity percentage or coordinated activity percentage will be allotted or will be documented. For example, if the patient is not able to eat in the Indian style, 9% will be given directly. So likewise, we have to calculate all the three domains of the arm component, that is range of motion, then muscle strength and coordinated activities. Coordinated activities, 10 activities, we have to just see the patient is able to do or not. But in joint range of motion and muscle strength, they are divided into different parts of the body or different joints of the upper extremity, that is your shoulder joint, elbow joint, wrist joint. Okay, and accordingly the weightage has been allotted to them, and then we have to calculate the joint range of motion, which will be added for all the joint together. Then muscle strength, all the joints muscle strength will be calculated and added together. Likewise, coordinated activities will be assessed and they are added together to find out total loss of coordinated activities. So loss of range of motion you have found, then loss of muscle strength you have found, then incoordination have been evaluated. So how we will document the total disability percentage of upper extremity? So for combining these three domains, there is a formula which has been mentioned in the act, that is called as combining formula or combination formula. This is a plus b 90 minus a upon 90, where a is the higher value and b is the lower value. So if you are combining the loss of range and motion with the loss of muscle strength, and if the value of range of motion loss is 30% and loss of muscle strength is 20%, so a will be higher value, that is 30%, and 20 will be the lower value, that is 20%. So that will be combined together using this formula, and whatever the outcome will come, we'll see the loss of coordination activity percentage, and accordingly we'll take the a as a higher value and b as a lower value from both, and then they will be added together, and that result will declare the loss percentage of the activity or permanent physical impairment percentage of the upper extremity. Then the second part, that is hand component assessment. Hand component assessment again has been given the maximum weightage of 90% loss, and hand component assessment is divided in the assessment of three parts. We have to assess the hand in the respect of prehension, in respect of strength, in respect of sensation, and the equal weightage has been given to all these three assessment or outcome measures, that is 30% prehension, 30% strength, 30% sensation. So in this we need to just do the assessment of the person with disability by seeing or by visualizing the patient is able to do or not. So in prehension, total value is 30%. For each activity, it has the PPI percentage has already been mentioned. Just we have to see what the patient is not able to do, and then we have to document the PPI percentage, and then we have to add up together. So if the patient is not able to do the opposition with the index finger, 2%. If no opposition at all, total 8%. Likewise, 2% loss for according to position done with each 4 fingers. Lateral pinch, if the patient is not able to do, 5% PPI will be given. Cylindrical grafts, 6%. Cylindrical grafts has been divided into two parts. If the patient is not able to do the cylindrical grafts to hold a large object of 4-inch size, then 3%. If the patient is not able to hold the object, a small object of 1 to 2 inch size, then 3%. If both inability is present with the patient, then total 6% disability or PPI percentage will be given to the person. Likewise for spherical grafts, hook grafts, so all PPI percentage have been mentioned depending upon what the patient is not able to do in the category of prehension. We just have to assess and add up together. Then the second domain, that is sensation. So prehension, sensation and strength we have to see in the hand component. So first we have seen prehension, now sensation. Again the weightage has been given similar 30% as has been given for the prehension and the strength. So again the loss of sensation has been given the PPI percentage. Loss of sensation in the thumb area 9%, index finger 6%, middle finger 5%, ring finger 5%, little finger 5%. If there is loss of sensation in all the fingers, we need to add up together and the maximum will be 30%. If there are partial loss of sensation, we have to assess and we have to document according to the sensation assessment you will do. You can use the grading of 0, 1 and 2, 0 complete loss, 1 partial loss, 2 normal sensation. So according to that you can find out how much percentage you will be giving for the partial loss, and they will be added up together. Then strength is 30%. It is usually measured with hand dynamometer. Then grip strength 20% has been allotted as the PPI percentage. Pinch strength is absent, then 10%. Dominant extremity is involved, and 10% will be allotted as an extra percentage. Then upper extremity shortening is also there. Then first inch, no additional weightage will be given. For each 1 inch beyond the first 1 inch, 2% additional weightage will be given to the total loss of activity or PPI percentage what you have calculated. In that it will be added as an extra weightage. 10% additional weightage for pain, deformity and loss of sensation and complication will be allotted. So total percent of PPI will not increase 100% in any case. So you have to keep in mind it should not exceed 100%, otherwise your disability evaluation calculation will be wrong. So in hand component we have seen there are 3 domains: loss of prehension, loss of sensation, loss of strain. We have to find it out according to the PPI percentage which has been allotted for different activities. In the case of prehension, in the case of sensation and strain. Then we have to add up all the 3 domains together in order to find out the hand component. Then again we have to use the combining formula: a plus b 90 minus a upon 90. A will be the higher value and b will be the lower value. So all these percentage will be added using this formula, and then we will calculate total loss of activity in the hand component. Then for total loss of upper extremity disability percentage will be calculated by adding the arm component loss and hand component loss. So then again we have to use the combining formula for those two. If we are adding the arm component and hand component disability, then we have to use again the combining formula, and then we have to find out the total loss of upper extremity disability. Now, I hope upper extremity permanent physical impairment calculation is clear to all of you. So, hand component and arm component are the main domains according to which we have to do the upper extremity PPI calculation. Now proceeding to lower extremity evaluation. Lower extremity evaluation again is divided into 2 parts. In the upper extremity it has been divided into 2 parts: arm component and the hand component. Here it has been divided into mobility component and the stability component, and you can see the mobility component has given the maximum weightage of 90%, and stability component has also been given the maximum weightage of 90%. Then mobility component is divided into 2 parts: range of movement 90% and muscle strength 90%. Okay, then stability component is, there are 9 functional activities mentioned in that, according to which we have to see what the patient is not able to do, and we have to give the PPI percentage. So each activity has the equal weightage of 10% of PPI. Now mobility component, that is in the lower extremity, is divided into 2 parts: range of movement loss and muscle strength loss, and those both activity has been given maximum weightage of 90%. Now mobility component, as the word itself indicating, we have to see how much the joints of the lower extremities are performing their mobility functions. So we have to see the range of motion. So 90% is the maximum value which has been allotted. For hip, it has been given 35%, knee up to 35%, ankle up to 20%. Again, in the Act of PWD 1995, equal weightage were given for hip, knee and ankle of 30% each. Now it has been redistributed in different proportion in the new Act of 2016. Hip has been given as 35%, knee has been given as 35%, and ankle has been given less weightage value, that is of 20%. Then we have to calculate for each joint separately and then add. We have to calculate the range of motion around the hip joint, at the knee joint and the ankle joint, and then we have to do how much the percentage of range of motion is decreased in all these three joints, and then we have to add up in a simple way. The strength again is measured according to the MRC scale. If grade 0, then 100% of 100% loss of strength will be allotted. If grade 5, then it will be considered as the normal strength, and the PPI percentage will be documented as 0. So then we have to combine strength with range of motion, then we have to add combining formula. And again, in calculation of range of motion loss of hip, knee, ankle, we have to calculate the range of motion at the hip, and then we have to multiply it with 0.35. So that will be the percentage loss around the hip joint. Likewise, we have to multiply the loss percentage with 0.35 for calculating the contribution of knee range of motion loss in total loss of mobility component. For ankle, we have to multiply the percentage loss with 0.2. Then they will be add up together and we will find out total loss of range of motion. Then that mobility component will be added to the strength component with the use of combining formula. In strength also we have to calculate for each for hip joint, knee joint and ankle joint. Muscles around the hip joint, around the knee joint and around the ankle joint, how much strength percentage is lost. And then each joint has been given equal weightage. In the case of strength, 30%, 30% and 30%. So we have to find out loss of strength around the hip joint, and then we have to multiply it with 0.3. Likewise for ankle joint and knee joint, and then we have to calculate the total percentage loss, and then both domain will be added by the combining formula. Stability component. Stability component is another important domain of your lower extremity permanent physical impairment assessment. A stability component, the maximum loss percentage has been allotted as the 90%. And in the Act, 9 functional activities has been mentioned. We have to just see what the patient is not able to do, and we have to allot 10% for each functional activity, and then we have to add it together. Then we have to add mobility and stability components by using the combination formula in order to find the total permanent physical impairment percentage of the lower extremity. So some extra points of percentage which need to be given to the total PPI of lower extremity, as we have seen in the upper extremity also. So for shortening, again, first half inch is no extra percentage of PPI will be allotted. Then after every half inch beyond the first half inch, 4% will be allotted. For deformity in functional position, 3% of extra disability will be allotted to the PWDs. In non-functional position, if there is a deformity, 6%. Pain, if there is a severe pain interfering with function, then 9%. Moderate pain, moderate pain interfering with function, 6%. Mild pain, slightly interfering with function, 3%. Loss of sensation, complete loss is present, 9%. Partial loss, 6% extra points will be given. Complications, superficial complications if present, 3%. Deep complications, then 6% will be given as the extra points to the total PPI percentage calculated. But in any case, it should not exceed 100%. So with this, I have completed this session on the calculation of permanent physical impairment percentage for the upper extremity and lower extremity. Now I would like if you will write the answer in the comment box of these two questions depending on what we have discussed right now. So the first question is based on lower extremity PPI calculation. So let us assume that the individual with the fracture of right hip joint has, in addition to 16% loss of movement, 8% loss of muscle strength also. So find out the PPI, permanent physical impairment percentage. Second question, let us assume that individual with an intra-articular fracture of bones of shoulder joint, in addition to 16.5% loss of motion in arm, has 8.3% loss of strength of muscles and 5% loss of coordination. So find out the PPI percentage loss. So it will be highly appreciable if you write the answer in the comment box. If you understand this session, which is based on the disability evaluation of the upper and the lower extremity permanent physical impairment based on RPWD Act 2016. So thanks for giving your precious time in listening this very important aspect of disability evaluation calculation method. Thank you.